Hey guys, I found this awesome video on Craig Lynch's YouTube channel, and it's basically everything I've been saying for the past 4 or 5 years. Please pay attention and watch this. This is a video that's worth sharing to people you care about.
Okay, so from my perspective, God writes His law in your heart. And that's the stuff you know from the time that you're a child. You can't take somebody else's lollipop. You can't take their little toy car. You don't hit somebody for no reason. There's all these things that are kind of born with. And it's only as we grow up, and the more we deal in school through their education and things like that, we can TV and radio and music and all these different things we're just bombarded with this whole different system, okay, that has been set up to rob us of the natural state of man. Man was created. Persons were invented. And it's really important to understand that. And, a lot of people, it's kind of funny, you'll hear people all the time saying, well, I want God to help me, or why doesn't God help me, or He failed me. And, sometimes I just kind of feel like there's this generic God out there that has 1,400 and 1,000 different faces and beliefs. And it's like, okay, I'm not taking away anybody's right to believe in that. But just from my perspective, if you don't really understand what law is and truth, because we're scattered, it's really hard to say that we can count on the Creator to help, because there's so much information that it's hard for Him to get to a point where, like some people, it's like you talk to them, they don't get it. And, they're like, well, what about this? And what about that? But this says this, and it's, something is preventing them. And some people say it's like, you're not being a man. You're not being a man. Well, and that's true. But what is the root of that? Like, we can just say you're not being a man and reprimand them, or we can say, well, here's why I think maybe you're having this struggle. So I'm just going to kind of paraphrase a lot and move kind of quick. But essentially what happened was there was this, I believe, I always mispronounce it, but it's Code of Hammurabi. It was created. It was a mercantile code. It was invented a long time ago by man. It's actually a pretty efficient code system. And what it was bringing the whole world of trade into one style or system or framework, okay? And, of course, that thing's been morphed over, the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, into the Holy Roman Empire to Europe, and then back to the Vatican, to canon law, where it appears now as USC code and, the UCC code, and it kind of creeps up into there. I mean, they're literally using code that was from 500 BC still today. And, the United States is absolutely set up like a church. They have their own temples, which, you look at a courthouse, you go to the Lincoln Memorial, it's called a temple, and they set the presidents up as gods. You can go to the Capitol building, you can see George Washington depicted as a god, and then you have their priest called the judge, and you have the prosecutor or the cleric, the clerk. You do a sentence or pay a penance, you serve your penance to whatever your conviction is. These are all religious terms. And a lot of people on this call or listening later are going to recognize, everybody's pretty familiar with a lot of the theories or teachings about the Vatican actually being the owner of the crown and how the crown crept in and everything. But they take this Babylonian code, and where it gets into the Bible, for those that are, kind of attuned to that, the Israelites were led into captivity after they were godless, right? They were starting to serve idols and statues, and they were bending their knee to statues. And they were warned by the prophet Jeremiah, hey, you guys are just, you're getting so far off base. We're going to be punished if you don't stop. Yeah, we're the chosen people. He's not going to do anything to us. Don't sweat it. Well, lo and behold, they kept on, and finally God got pissed. Off they go to Babylon. Now they're down in Babylon for 80 years. That's quite a while. That's a couple generations of kids growing up who learn this code. So you have a whole, people that bring this foreign code when they come back out of captivity into the Temple of Jerusalem, and now they incorporate this code into the temple worship. And this is where Jesus comes in and beats the money changers. Of course, that story is a little different than it's portrayed a lot in modern churches and in teachings. He was literally the king of Israel at that moment. He had come in on the donkey, and they accepted him as the lawful king of Israel. And when he went into the money changers, that was in the far back where, they would take the temple sacrificial coins and wealth of the temple And then if they were acting up or embezzling money or not doing correctly, the king would whip them over the back of the neck and shoulders with this whip. So when he went in, he was literally showing who he was, because he couldn't have even been in there. And we talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, JC really wanted me to mention, woe unto you lawyers, in the book of Luke in chapter 11. They had brought this Babylonian system of statue worship, which we know today as statues. And there's a YouTube channel called Just Conspiracy that has a wonderful video on that called Statue to Statues, where it's just modern idol worship. You have people really concerned about worship.
Okay, what he's talking about here is the word statue as in a legislative act or a rule or a what do you call that? Ordinance, some type of ordinance. So what he's doing is he's making a comparison between the statue that we follow, right, as citizens compared to statues. And he's saying they're related. And he's saying that when the Jews came back from Babylon, they brought this system of law with them. So God's law is absolute, and these statutes are not. They're Babylonian type laws, if you will. They're invented, not created, because God created law, which is natural law.
In these statutes, because they're afraid of getting in trouble, because the high priest of that church called the United States will punish them if they don't follow these statutes. So essentially they're trading the law of the Creator, which is don't bend your knee to another god, don't serve false idols, but you've got to serve him, So the Tower of Babel was literally built to overthrow God. Like they were building their own kingdom, and they were working their way up to heaven. And that was what they were attempting to do. So, if you take that from the Israelites bringing that back, and that sets up a whole new thing, which we're getting ready to get into, because I'm going to share a couple stories with you that will show you how you absolutely are not only not supposed to bend your knee to foreign governments or other gods, but it's absolutely forbid. And in today's churches, they teach that you're absolutely supposed to. And that's why you see the flag of the United States flying over top of the Christian flag at these churches.
So what he's saying is, when you disregard God's 10 commandments, God's law, God's natural law, right, in favor of saying, okay, well, we have to obey everything that these politicians tell us to do, right? And you hear it in churches, we have to wear our masks because they told us to, and it's not a sin to do it, and you do it up until the point it's a sin. No, you have to stop obeying immediately. Immediately. That means not paying income tax. That means not wearing a mask, not getting a vaccine, not having a license to get married, not having a license to travel. All these things, you have to stop doing that. Is basically, I'm trying to summarize what he's saying.
Shows who owns that church. The reason it's important to understand this from a biblical perspective for me is because the Creator is the lawgiver. But even from a geopolitical standpoint nowadays, you have a tremendous amount of issues coming out of the Middle East with Israel, the United States, treaties, even flags. There's a deception going on that's so deep that people, it's just almost unimaginable to think that we have been tricked that much, because, we're all pretty smart people, and we're pretty perceptive and honorable. We try to work and take care of our families and stuff, but over Israel right now, you have a flag flying that literally is this, I always mispronounce it, but it's the Star of Rephaim or whatever it is, but literally it's the hexagram that represents Saturn in Anglo-Saxon tongue, which is Satan or Satan. And he's talking about graven images. That's absolutely true, but what's a statue? A statue's a graven image. It's, you look at the paper and you see this statue. It's literally written in dog Latin to a dead fiction, or a person, which is, the Bible says that God's not a respecter of persons. He created man. And it also says in the latter days that man shall be a lover of death rather than a lover of life. But if you think about that from one perspective, you could say because people are following mammon or money or Baal worship, and they're the lover of that, They're willing to sacrifice the man position to be in the position of a person, which is absolute death. And it leads to debt, and it leads to guilt, and it leads to idol worship, and it's all those things that you think is some other kind of thing that it must mean, like if you're a mafia guy and you kill people and you've got a lot of money. I mean, it doesn't mean that. I mean, it's a system that has been designed around us to deceive us. I mean, it says in the Bible, he deceives the whole world. I mean, that's pretty significant because we're in that world, you know? And it's like, you mean to tell me, I mean, all of us have woken up at different levels, at different times in our lives. Some people when they're 12, some people when they're 40, some people when they're 72. But just think about where you're at, and I'm sure everybody can feel what I'm getting ready to say. Think of how many times you've tried to carry on a conversation with somebody and tell them some of this information, and they look at you, and then drool starts to come out of the side of their mouth, and they just glaze over, and they'd rather talk about football, the lottery number. Did you hear about that guy on The Voice who won? What a great singer he is. But they're almost completely uninterested in all this truth that you're just slaving over on a computer or in a book, and you're spending all this time trying to figure this stuff out. And it's like they just don't even get it. It's because they think the system that they have, that they're under, that's a real world, but it's really an artificial overlay. I mean, it is not. Legal is not law. Legal is literally the undoing of the Creator's law. I mean, there's a movie called The Devil's Advocate, and I don't know if everybody's seen it or not, but if there's no movie that I'm aware of that's a better depiction of what Lucifer's like. And it's funny that the character they use in that movie is the owner of one of the world's largest law firms. And he says, we're gonna create a mess, out of the legal system the stench is gonna stink so high that it reaches heaven and chokes the whole lot of them. Well, that sounds just like the Tower of Babel. They're trying to build a system, and and a lot of the players, they don't realize it's just like people in any organization. You have people that are privates, and then you have people that are generals, and then you have kings. And those people all possess information and understanding at different varying levels of that society. So they don't all know they're doing evil, but you have to think, when you're doing something wrong, when you're getting over on somebody, or when you're capitalizing on someone. I have to think that these people understand that just fine. A lot of them, I mean, they may not see the big picture, but they definitely know at the moment that they're doing somebody wrong. So, the Bible also says to come out of Babylon, and it calls it a great mystery and a whore and a harlot. And it's like, okay, so if Jesus is cursing the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes, and he calls them lawyers, because first he says, woe unto you lawyers, you scribes, you Pharisees. And everybody all of a sudden thinks that's just talking about a high priest. Well, it is, but it's also talking about the Sanhedrin, and it's talking about basically the leaders of that religious organization had blasphemed it literally by following false idols and worship, by bringing this mercantile system, this legal system of Babylon back to the temple, and they desecrated the temple. Okay, well, in the book of Revelations, it talks about how that great city, Babylon, falls in an hour. Like, it literally just, boom, it's going to fall. And it's interesting who it says mourns that. It says the merchants of the world mourn. So we know it's commerce or admiralty jurisdiction. So it's kind of interesting if you go into Black's Law. JC, would you look this up can you do that while I'm talking? Can you look definition of church up in Black's Law?
Hey guys, I've only got about 30 seconds left on this video. If you want to see the rest of it, let me know, and I'll play the rest of it in a part 2. But real quick, he talked about the star of Israel in there, and being the star of their god Remphan. That can be found in Acts 7:43 and Amos 5:26. So the star of Israel is a pagan star. That's why you shouldn't have it hung up in your church or in your house or anything like that. They're actually in disobedience to God when they have that star. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did. God bless.